Usually, when we talk about a sporting mismatch, there's this expectation of inevitability. It's kind of like physics.
Right, like gravity just taking over.
Exactly. Like if you drop a bowling ball and a feather from a rooftop, you know exactly what's going to happen. Gravity just points and says, yep, there it is. That's how the universe works.
Yeah, the heavy object falls fast, the light object just flutters away. It's totally binary.
Right. The favorite crushes the underdog. And, I mean, we crave that predictability, don't we?
Oh, absolutely. When the underlying data accurately models the outcome, it validates our understanding of the world. The bigger mass wins, the wealthier team dominates.
The established system prevails. But then you step into the world of international football, specifically the 2026 World Cup.
Oh, man. Yeah.
And suddenly that whole physics equation just completely shatters. I mean, we are looking at a tactical landscape and a specific match today that genuinely broke the laws of sporting gravity.
It's the absolute definition of statistical cognitive dissonance. Like, it literally broke the predictive algorithms.
It really did. So for those of you joining us on this deep dive, the mission for today is unpacking one of the most astonishing mismatches and statistical anomalies really in the history of sports.
The miracle in Atlanta.
The miracle in Atlanta. At the 2026 FIFA World Cup, we are talking about a scenario that sounds like an actual typo in the history books.
It really does sound made up.
Right. Okay, so paint the picture with me. On one side of the pitch at the Mercedes-Benz Stadium, you have Spain. These are the European champions.
The undisputed global masters of possession football.
Exactly. Stepping onto the grass on a 30-match unbeaten streak. And on the other side, you have Cape Verde, a tiny African archipelago nation of, what, fewer than 500,000 people?
Yeah, fewer than 500,000. They are the third smallest nation to ever compete in the tournament.
Making their absolute debut on the World Cup stage. And the result, a 0-0 draw that just completely shocked the globe.
And to truly understand how this happened, we have to synthesize a massive stack of source material, because this isn't just about reading a box score.
No, not at all. We are pulling match reports from Sky Sports and the Indian Express. We're digging into the advanced tactical analytics from SofaScore and Football IQ.
The data on this one is wild.
It is. And we're also unpacking the raw, unfiltered fan reactions from Reddit, the cultural and geopolitical context from The Guardian, and even looking at the sports media analysis from podcasts like Sports Pro, Buzzsprout, and OBS Body to really understand the aftermath.
It's a huge, multifaceted story.
It is. Okay, let's unpack this. If I had to give you an analogy to set the tone for what happened in Atlanta, I want you to imagine like a martial artist.
Okay, I'm with you.
A lightweight amateur stepping into the ring with the reigning heavyweight champion of the world. The heavyweight throws 27 massive knockout punches.
Just swinging for the fences.
Right. And the martial artists, they just dodge, they weave, they slip every single strike perfectly without ever throwing a single dirty punch of their own.
Just total evasion.
Total evasion.
Yeah.
And without ever lashing out in panic. It was a masterclass in agonizing discipline.
That's a great way to put it. Because the underlying numbers of that fight, they reveal this fascinating illusion. When we look at the raw data from Football IQ and SofaScore, the scale of the siege is almost hard to comprehend.
The numbers are just staggering.
They are. I mean, Spain held 74% possession.
Wow.
Yeah. They completed 734 out of 801 attempted passes, which, is a 92% pass accuracy rate.
Let's actually pause on that number for a second, because 734 passes isn't just a statistic. I mean, it's a physiological weapon.
Oh, absolutely.
That means Spain is completing a pass every few seconds for over an hour and a half of active gameplay. If you are the team without the ball, you are running, stopping, pivoting, and sprinting 734 times just to track the ball.
Yeah, without ever getting the psychological reward of actually touching it.
Exactly. It's brutal.
It's designed to be torture by 1,000 cuts. The Spanish system under Luis de la Fuente relies on exhausting the opponent's mind just as much as their legs.
Right, because you have to stay constantly focused.
Exactly. And they didn't just pass it around their own offenders either. They generated 27 total shots, with 16 of those coming from inside the Cape Verde penalty box.
Wait, 16 inside the box?
Inside the box. They racked up 10 corners compared to Cape Verde's 1. They entered the final third, which is the attacking third of the pitch, closest to the opponent's goal, 84 separate times.
84 times. And the most telling metric of all, I think, is expected goals, or XG.
Yeah, that's the big one in modern analytics.
Right. For those of you unfamiliar, XG is a metric that assigns a mathematical probability to every shot based on historical data. So if you take a shot from 2 yards out with no goalie, the XG is very high.
Maybe like a 0.9?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
If you shoot from 40 yards out through a massive crowd, it's maybe 0.02. So Spain's total XG for the match was 2.16.
In Cape Verde's.
Just 0.30. Statistically, Spain generated enough high-quality chances to score at least 2 goals. Cape Verde generated basically nothing.
What's fascinating here is the tactical concept of sterile domination.
Sterile domination, I like that term.
Yeah, it's a term analysts use when a team has absolute territorial control but lacks the penetrative edge to break the final barrier. Spain set up in a classic 4-3-3 formation, 4 defenders, 3 midfielders, 3 attackers.
Pretty standard stuff for them.
Right, but De La Fuente did something very specific. He used Pablo Gavi, who was traditionally a roaming, energetic midfielder, aggressively as a number 9.
Okay, wait, let's clarify that for the listeners.
Yeah.
Because when you say number 9, historically, people picture a massive, towering striker, right?
Yeah, like a big target man.
Exactly. A guy whose job is to wrestle with center backs and head the ball into the net. Gavi is, well, he's not that. He's small, he's agile, he's a playmaker. Why put him there?
So the modern game often utilizes what's called a false 9.
Ah, okay.
By putting a highly technical midfielder like Gavi in the center forward position, the goal is to have him drop deep, pull the opponent's central defenders out of position, and create these chaotic spaces for the wingers to run into.
So he's essentially bait.
Exactly. De La Fuente wanted Gavi's relentless energy to press high and disrupt Cape Verde's defense from the inside out.
But according to Sky Sports, Mikel Oyarzabal, Spain's starting forward, playing right alongside Gavi, didn't touch the ball for the first 30 minutes of the match.
Which is just insane.
How on earth does a forward on a team holding the ball 74% of the time go half an hour without making contact with the leather?
Because Cape Verde refused to take the bait, they deployed a deeply compact 4-1-4-1 defensive block.
Okay, visualize that for us.
Imagine a flat line of 4 defenders right on the edge of their own penalty box. Just a few yards in front of them is another flat line of 4 midfielders.
Right.
And tucked right in between those 2 lines is a single defensive midfielder. This completely nullified Spain's strategy. When Gavi tried to drop deep to pull a defender out, the Cape Verde defenders just let him go.
They just ignored him.
They handed him off to the midfield line. They maintained their perfect horizontal structure.
So they basically built a human wall, and they completely conceded the middle of the field.
Total concession.
So Spain's world-class midfielders, guys like Rodri, Pedri, Fabian Ruiz, they had all the time in the world to pass it back and forth 40 yards away from the goal.
Yeah, play all the passes you want out there.
But the moment they tried to thread a pass forward into the penalty area, into the danger zone, there was simply no space.
None. And that forced Spain to abandon their intricate central passing and rely on crossing from the wide areas.
Which isn't really their game, right?
Not at all. They attempted a staggering 36 crosses into the penalty box during the match. But here is the critical data point from SofaScore.
Okay, lay it on me.
Only 6 of those 36 crosses were accurate.
Wow.
That's a 17% success rate. They were essentially launching the ball blindly into a penalty box, heavily populated by Cape Verdean defenders who were perfectly positioned to head it away.
It's like watching a burglar walking around a house, right? Jiggling the front doorknob, checking the back window, tapping on the glass, but the entire house is just completely boarded up from the inside.
That's the perfect analogy.
And just to highlight how little Cape Verde cared about having the ball themselves, they completed exactly 14 passes in Spain's half for the entire match.
14! It's almost comical.
Sky Sports noted that is the joint lowest figure in a World Cup half since they started recording the stat in 1966.
14 passes in the opponent's territory over 90-plus minutes is almost unfathomable at the elite level. It raises a massive philosophical debate that is currently raging in football analytics.
And that's exactly where my mind goes, because you hear these stats, 74% possession, 800 passes, and it sounds like a massacre.
Right, it sounds totally lopsided.
But is possession actually becoming an outdated metric for dominance? Like, if the opposing team is perfectly comfortable letting you hold the ball, are we confusing holding the object with controlling the game?
That is the million-dollar question. The historical logic of possession football, popularized by Spain's tiki-taka era, was simple. If we have the ball, the opponent cannot score.
Makes sense on paper.
Right. It was viewed as both an offensive weapon and a defensive shield. But what Cape Verde demonstrated is that control in modern football is not about who holds the physical ball. It is entirely about who dictates the spaces on the pitch.
Dictating the spaces.
Yeah. Cape Verde said, look, you can have the ball 40 yards from our goal, but you cannot have it 15 yards from our goal. In a bizarre, inverse way, Cape Verde completely controlled the geography of the match, even if Spain controlled the object.
Controlling the geography versus controlling the object. That is a brilliant distinction. And knowing how fiercely that geography was protected brings us to the most mind-bending statistic of this entire deep dive.
Oh, this is the one that really gets people.
Yeah. If you hear that Spain had the ball 74% of the time, that they forced 84 entries into the final third and took 27 shots, the logical assumption is that Cape Verde survived by playing dirty.
You'd assume it was a bloodbath, yeah.
Right. You picture absolute desperation. Defenders hacking players down, grabbing shirts, cynical slide tackles, just doing whatever it takes to break up the rhythm and survive the onslaught.
That is the traditional underdog playbook. It's often referred to as the dark arts of football. Tactical fouls to stop counterattacks, time wasting to break momentum, physical intimidation.
But the data from Optajo reveals the exact opposite. Cape Verde committed exactly one foul the entire match.
It's just one.
One single foul. That is the fewest fouls committed by any team in a World Cup match on record since 1966.
It is a statistic that genuinely defies physiological and psychological belief. Let me explain the mechanism of a foul for a defending team because it's important context.
Please do.
When you are chasing the ball for 90 minutes, lactic acid builds up in your legs. Your cognitive processing slows down by fractions of a second. When fatigue sets in, a defender loses a step.
Sure, your body just starts to give out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So a world-class attacker like Lamine Yamal or Pedri shifts their weight. The exhausted defender lunges in just a millisecond too late. They miss the ball, they clip the ankle, and the referee blows the whistle.
It's almost inevitable.
Right. To defend for 94 minutes against the most agile, technically gifted players in Europe and only commit a single infraction. It requires a level of physical discipline and mental concentration that is practically monastic.
Monastic is the perfect word. I fell deep down the rabbit hole on Reddit reading the chakra thread about this specific stat, and the fan reactions were just incredible.
Oh, I'm sure they had a field day with it.
They really did. They were coining entirely new terms for it. One user called it ethical defending.
Ethical defending, I love that.
Right, another called it halal harumbal. Now, harumbal being internet slang for ugly, deeply defensive football, but halal implying it was pure, clean, and morally uncompromised.
The internet always finds a way to capture the tactical zeitgeist, don't they?
They really do. The fans were losing their minds over the fact that Cape Verde's defenders were pulling off clean slide tackles inside their own penalty box without ever resorting to time wasting.
Which is unheard of for an underdog trying to hold on to a draw.
A user named Skunkreider pointed out how refreshing it was. They noted how modern club football often comes down to knowing all the little dirty tricks, when to fall over, when to pull a jersey. Cape Verde rejected all of it.
Completely rejected.
But hold on, I have to challenge this a bit. Because if Cape Verde is just standing there, refusing to lunge, refusing to tackle aggressively, why doesn't a generational talent like Lamine Yamal just dribble right through them?
It's a fair question.
It sounds too simple, right? If you don't stick a foot in, shouldn't the attacker just walk past you?
It sounds simple, yeah, but the physical execution is excruciating. Let's break down how they achieved this statistically anomalous feat by looking at the geometry of that 4-1-4-1 formation.
Okay, back to the whiteboard.
The key is the one sitting between the midfield and the defense. A player named Kevin Lanini. His role was essentially to act as a dynamic human shield. Instead of chasing the ball, Cape Verde's defenders watched the Spanish player's hips and eyes.
They're reading the body language, not the ball.
Precisely. It's called prioritizing spatial awareness over physical aggression. If Pedri looked left and opened his hips to pass, the entire Cape Verdean defensive line took 2 synchronized lateral steps to the left.
Moving as a single unit.
Exactly. They closed the passing lane before the ball even left Pedri's foot. They weren't defending the player, they were defending the grass.
Wow.
If you lunge in for a tackle against Yamal, he will flick the ball past your extended leg, and then you have to foul him or he's through on goal. Cape Verde simply refused to extend the leg.
So they just stay planted.
They stayed perfectly balanced on the balls of their feet, shifted side to side as a cohesive breathing unit, and let Spain pass themselves into total frustration.
I have to bring up this supreme irony that a Reddit user named Sarazaga highlighted. Spain, The team holding the ball for almost 80% of the game, the team supposedly dictating the elegant, beautiful play.
Yeah, the artists of the game.
Exactly. They committed 10 fouls. Cape Verde committed 1. The team with all the ball committed 10 times as many fouls as the team backed against the wall defending for their lives.
The mechanism behind those fouls tells a psychological story. Spain's fouls were born entirely out of frustration.
Just lashing out.
Yeah. When they finally did make a mistake and lose possession, they were so desperate to win it back instantly to sustain their siege, a tactic known as the counterpress, that they committed careless, aggressive, and often late fouls.
They couldn't handle not having the ball.
Exactly. Cape Verde, on the other hand, accepted their reality. They were at absolute peace with defending.
You know, it really makes you think about our own lives. I want you, the listener, to really reflect on this for a second. Think about a massive professional or personal challenge you faced recently.
That's an interesting way to look at it.
Right. Because when we are backed into a corner, under immense pressure from a seemingly superior force, maybe it's a massive deadline, a corporate restructuring, or a personal crisis, how often do we rely on foul play?
We look for the easy way out.
How often do we look for a shortcut, or lash out, or bend our own moral rules just to survive the pressure?
It is the primal human fight or flight response. We naturally gravitate toward whatever stops the pain or the pressure immediately, even if that action is messy or compromises our principles.
Exactly. But here is a team on the biggest stage of their entire lives, backed against the wall by an absolute giant of the sport, and they maintained absolutely pristine discipline.
Total composure.
They didn't break their own moral code, they didn't panic, they just executed perfectly. But, you know, as amazing as the structural system was, a whiteboard doesn't stop a soccer ball.
No, it certainly doesn't.
You need individual human beings to step up and perform miracles. And no one performed a bigger miracle in Atlanta than Cape Verde's goalkeeper, Vozinha.
Oh, Vozinha's performance is destined to become enshrined in World Cup folklore.
Let's contextualize exactly who this man is. Vozinha is 40 years old.
40.
40 years old. And to
Yeah.
give you an idea of his daily reality, last season he was playing his club football in Portugal's second division.
Right. He's not exactly living the superstar lifestyle.
No, we are not talking about a guy playing under the bright lights of the Champions League every Tuesday with access to cryogenic recovery chambers and endless sports science budgets. He's a veteran grinder.
A true journeyman.
Yet he steps onto the pitch in Atlanta and pulls off a 9.7 SOFA score rating, easily taking player of the match. He made 7 crucial faves, and 6 of those were shots from inside the penalty box.
Incredible.
The advanced metrics show he prevented 1.46 expected goals entirely by himself.
And historically, the magnitude of his presence cannot be overstated. At 40 years and 12 days old, he became the oldest player to ever debut in a nation's first ever World Cup match.
Wait, the oldest debutant ever?
Yeah, he surpassed Eloy Room's record and now sits just behind the legendary Egyptian goalkeeper Essam El Hadary for the oldest debutants in the overall history of the tournament.
Here's where it gets really interesting. I want to look at the specific anatomy of these saves because Sky Sports detailed them and they are jaw-dropping.
Let's hear it.
Early on, he tips an Oyarzabal header over the crossbar. Right before halftime, Ferran Torres, who plays for Barcelona, by the way, gets a close-range sitter from 6 yards out.
Should be on automatic goal.
Automatic. Most keepers freeze, but Vozinha gets his massive frame down low in a split second to deny it. In stoppage time of the first half, Aymeric Laporte gets a powerful, goal-bound header, and Vozinha somehow contorts his body to tip it around the post.
It's unreal.
How does a 40-year-old body react that fast against 22-year-old elite athletes?
What happens to a goalkeeper in a crucible match like this is a profoundly fascinating psychological and neurological phenomenon. Sports psychologists often refer to it as entering a flow state.
Okay, flow state, sure.
But a better way to visualize it is to think of a master drummer finding the absolute pocket of a beat.
Oh, I like that. Unpack the drummer analogy for us.
When a drummer first starts a complex rhythm, they are actively thinking about their hands and feet. But once they lock into the groove, the cognitive processing just shuts down.
Becomes automatic.
Exactly. Muscle memory takes over the central nervous system. For a goalkeeper, making 1 or 2 spectacular early saves acts as the count-in to that rhythm.
It sets the tempo.
Right. Once Vozinha made that early save on Oyarzabal, he stopped thinking about where the ball was going. His spatial awareness locked in. Neurologically, the goal literally begins to feel smaller to the opposing attackers, and the ball appears visually larger and slower to the goalkeeper.
That's wild. Like time slows down for him.
His reaction times decrease by crucial milliseconds because he isn't processing. He is just reacting within the rhythm of the game.
And conversely, that rhythm absolutely shatters the psychology of an attacking team like Spain.
Oh, without a doubt.
When you were taking 27 shots, weaving through the defense, and the 40-year-old guy in the net is saving everything with perfect calm, doubt creeps in like a virus.
It literally changes the biomechanics of the attackers. They start trying to hit the ball too perfectly.
They stop trusting their own rhythm.
Right. Instead of relying on their own muscle memory, they aim for the absolute uppermost corners of the net because they believe that's the only way to beat him. This overthinking leads to snatched chances, missed targets, and rushed volleys.
So he's defending them mentally as well as physically.
Vozinha didn't just stop the physical ball. He took up residence inside the heads of the Spanish forward line.
The mental fortitude is unbelievable. To come from the Portuguese second tier and stare down players from Barcelona, Manchester City, and Arsenal without blinking.
It's the stuff of movies.
It is, but he wasn't a one-man army. We have to shout out the human wall operating right in front of him.
The center back pairing was immense. You had Pico Lopes, who brings his own incredible backstory. He was actually born in Ireland and plays his club football for Shamrock Rovers.
I saw his stats. He made 11 clearances during the match. He was like a magnet for the ball.
A total anchor for the defense.
And in the 88th minute, with Spanish pressure at its absolute suffocating peak, he pulls off a desperate goal-saving block on Oyarzabal that would have certainly broken the tie.
Just threw his body on the line. And operating alongside him was Dini Borges. According to the analytics, Borges won the most duels of any player on the pitch.
He was a monster out there.
He really was. He was the vocal leader orchestrating that shifting defensive line we talked about. Whenever Spain launched one of those 36 crosses into the box, it was usually the head of Borges or Lopes meeting the ball, perfectly positioned because they were reading the flight path fractions of a second faster than the Spanish attackers.
It was a collective, impenetrable wall. And yet, when you have an extreme tactical clash like this between the absolute elite and the ultimate underdog, the post-match fallout is always revealing. You see the raw clash of philosophies.
The contrast in the post-match press conferences was arguably as stark as the contrast in the possession statistics.
Listen to this quote from Rodri. He is Spain's star midfielder, widely considered one of the best in the world. He complained to Goal.com after the match, visibly annoyed, and simply muttered, "They don't get past midfield."
It is the quintessential complaint from a possession-heavy juggernaut.
It sounds a bit like whining, honestly.
It implies a deep-seated belief in a sort of tactical superiority that wasn't financially or mathematically rewarded on the scoreboard.
Right. And the Spanish coach, Luis de la Fuente, was in complete denial. He told reporters he had zero doubts about his team's performance.
Zero doubts after a 0-0 draw against Cape Verde.
Yeah. He blamed the result on a lack of freshness and a clinical edge, but absolutely insisted that their idea of football, the system that brought them a 30-match unbeaten run, was flawless.
De La Fuente is naturally protecting his tactical paradigm. But if we connect this to the broader psychological picture, it highlights a specific brand of entitlement that elite, highly successful teams develop.
Entitlement is the perfect word.
Spain, having recently won the Euros and dominating global football for decades, felt an intrinsic entitlement to the space on the pitch and an entitlement to the goals. When Cape Verde stubbornly refused to grant them the space, Spain's cognitive dissonance kicked in. They assumed they just needed more freshening up.
Right. Because De La Fuente brings on massive stars like Lamine Yamal and Mikel Merino in the 71st minute in pure desperation, thinking, we just need better players to execute the exact same plan.
Exactly. Rather than acknowledging that their entire tactical premise for that specific match had been neutralized, they doubled down on their entitlement. They couldn't process that their reality had been altered.
Entitlement to the space. I really love that phrasing. It's exactly like a massive corporation looking at a spreadsheet, seeing they spent $50 million on marketing, and demanding to know why the consumer isn't buying the product.
Yes, the math says they should win, so why aren't they winning?
Yo, I want to pivot completely and look at Cape Verde's coach, Pedro Leitão Brito, universally known as Bubista. His approach is the polar opposite of corporate spreadsheets.
Bubista is a profoundly compelling figure. To understand his tactics, you really have to understand his background. He grew up as a shepherd's son on the island of Boa Vista.
The Guardian ran a profile on him, and it's amazing. During his playing days, he was known as the silent captain, But it's his coaching philosophy that blew my mind. He grounds his entire approach in a Cape Verdean cultural concept called Morabeza.
Morabeza is deeply woven into the fabric of the islands. It roughly translates to an atmosphere of ultimate hospitality, relaxation, and a fundamental, no-stress approach to life's adversities.
Now, on the surface, bringing a no-stress, relax vibe into a high-stakes World Cup match against Spain sounds like a recipe for getting destroyed 8-0.
It sounds completely counterintuitive.
But it was the secret weapon.
It was the antidote to the Spanish siege. Let's tie this back to his background as a shepherd. How do you move a flock of sheep across rugged, unpredictable terrain?
Well, you don't chase them.
Right. You do not sprint at them wildly, waving your arms. If you do, they scatter in panic. You guide them. You stand in their way patiently, calmly blocking the wrong path until they naturally funnel into the exact pen you want them in.
That makes perfect sense.
Bubista took the patience of a shepherd and applied it to corralling the Spanish midfield.
Oh my God, that is exactly what the 4-1-4-1 block was. They didn't chase the Spanish players. They just calmly blocked the dangerous paths and herded them out to the wings to take useless crosses.
Precisely. And the underlying psychological foundation of Morabeza made it possible. Against a team like Spain, panic is your absolute biggest enemy.
Panic leads to mistakes.
If a defender stresses about the 800 passes, they break formation. If they stress, they dive into a tackle in the penalty box and concede a penalty. Morabeza allowed them to absorb 27 shots with total, unshakable psychological calm.
And Bubista's genius extends to how he builds team culture off the pitch, too. Cape Verde is a nation heavily defined by its diaspora. Because of economic realities, many of the players are born and raised all over the world.
Right, they have players from all over Europe.
But Bubista instituted a strict rule. The players are only allowed to speak Creole when they are together on international duty. He enforces this to maintain their shared identity.
It is a masterstroke of sports psychology and sociological bonding. He takes players born in Rotterdam, in Ireland, in France, and in Portugal, and unifies them under a single linguistic and cultural banner.
So they aren't just strangers playing together.
Exactly. When they step onto the pitch, they aren't a disparate collection of club players. They are a brotherhood. And a brotherhood is infinitely more resilient against pressure than a collection of highly paid individuals.
You can hear that pure joy in the players, too. Contrast Rodri's bitter complaints with a quote from Cape Verde striker Dalen Livramento right before the tournament. He said, "Let's have some fun. We got ourselves into the World Cup. Now it's time to have fun together."
It perfectly encapsulates the psychological dichotomy of the match. Spain treated the 90 minutes like a heavily audited corporate merger where the quarterly projections weren't adding up.
Just clinical and stressful.
Cape Verde treated it like a joyful, defiant celebration of their right to simply exist on the same pitch.
So what does this all mean for us? Did Spain's sense of entitlement actually blind them to the reality of the game? While Cape Verde's total acceptance of their reality, knowing they would have to defend deep for 90 minutes and suffer without the ball, actually freed them to execute perfectly.
I believe the evidence points entirely to yes. When you fight reality, you make mistakes.
That's a great point.
Spain fought the reality that Cape Verde was unyielding, which led to rushed shots, frustrated tackles, and rigid thinking. Cape Verde embraced the reality of their underdog status. That acceptance removed the fear of losing, which allowed them to operate with clarity and achieve that pristine ethical perfection in their defending.
That idea of identity and the diaspora brings us right into the broader context of this match, because you absolutely cannot tell the story of Cape Verde without talking about the fans in the stands. This team represents so much more than just the physical islands.
The demographic reality of Cape Verde is entirely unique on the global stage.
It really is.
The population of the islands themselves is roughly 500,000. However, there's an equally large, if not significantly larger, population of Cape Verdeans living in the United States diaspora, primarily concentrated in the Northeast.
Right. So playing this World Cup match in Atlanta wasn't just a neutral site. It was effectively a spiritual home game for the diaspora. There's a massive supporters club called the 12th Tuberon, the 12th Shark, led by a fan named Andrea Levy.
And their presence was huge.
But the journey to get those fans into the Mercedes-Benz Stadium was incredibly fraught with logistical and geopolitical friction. Now, just to be clear for you listening, as a rule, we aren't here to debate international politics or take sides on policies, but to understand the emotional weight of this match, we have to look at the context the fans navigated, exactly as outlined impartially in the cultural reporting from The Guardian.
The off-pitch realities for traveling fans are often the hidden, silent stories of major international tournaments. They completely dictate the energy of the stadium.
According to the sources, fans attempting to travel directly from Cape Verde faced severe administrative hurdles. Initially, there was a requirement to post a $15,000 bond just to secure entry into the U.S.
Which is a massive barrier.
While this requirement was eventually waived late in the process, it created immense anxiety and made planning practically impossible for many. Furthermore, the reporting highlights active boycotts. Many fans flat out refused to travel to the U.S. in protest after Cape Verde was included on a specific immigration list regarding welfare recipient rates by country of origin, compounded by protests regarding overseas conflicts.
So these geopolitical tensions created a scenario where simply attending the match evolved from a fun vacation into an act of significant financial effort.
It was a deeply complex personal decision.
Right. The fans who were there, whether they navigated the administrative hurdles to travel from the islands or whether they gathered from the massive U.S. diaspora, they brought a profound, concentrated level of emotional investment into that arena.
And you could feel that investment bleeding through the television screens. Despite all those obstacles, the Mercedes-Benz Stadium, which holds over 67,000 people, was an absolute sea of blue shirts.
The atmosphere was electric.
They weren't just cheering, they were playing traditional Morna music in the stands. Artists like Maurizia. They adopted Soraya Ramos's anthem, Na Terra. It transcended a sporting crowd. It was a defiant cultural festival.
Sports serve as a uniquely powerful, unifying beacon for a diaspora. For those 90 minutes, the geographical separation between the islands, Europe, and the United States just vanishes.
It all melts away.
And in elite sports, there is an undeniable symbiotic synergy between the emotional energy of a crowd and the physical performance of a team.
I have to wonder, do you think the specific struggles the fans went through off the pitch just to secure a seat in that stadium might have directly fueled that ethical but relentless fight the players showed on the pitch?
While it's impossible to quantify with a metric like XG, historically, absolutely.
It has to, right?
When a team is unified by a shared language, under a coach who preaches cultural identity, and they look up and see what their supporters have sacrificed to be in the stands, it adds a profound layer of responsibility.
You can't let them down.
Exactly. You do not want to let that diaspora down by losing your discipline, by giving up, or by taking a cheap foul. The resilience of the traveling and domestic diaspora was perfectly, symmetrically mirrored by the resilience of Vozinha, Lopes, and Borges on the grass.
And from that cauldron of emotion in the stadium in Atlanta, the story just exploded globally. Which brings us to the final piece of this puzzle, the global media ripple effect.
This is where it gets really interesting from a modern perspective.
Because a story this incredible, involving a 40-year-old goalkeeper in a tiny island nation, doesn't just stay within the confines of a 90-minute broadcast anymore. We want to transition to how modern sports media captures, amplifies, and literally sustains a miracle like this. We're pulling insights here from the podcasting and media analytics sources we reviewed from SportsPro, Buzzsprout, and OBS-BOT.
The media life cycle of a sporting event in 2026 is vastly structurally different than it was even a decade ago.
It's totally shifted.
The live broadcast and the morning newspaper report are no longer the end of the story. They are merely the catalyst.
Right. In the SportsPro podcast source, they were doing a deep dive into the massive growth of women's sports audiences. They pinpointed that the exponential growth wasn't just about better TV slots. It was fueled by creating entirely new digital entry points for fans.
Community engagement outside of game day.
Exactly. Leveraging decentralized digital media, like turning YouTube highlight watchers into dedicated audio listeners.
We can apply that exact same digital framework to the Cape Verde phenomenon. The 0-0 draw on the pitch was merely the raw material. The decentralized digital ecosystem is what refined it into a global cultural moment.
Let me give you a perfect example of this from the Reddit source. A user noted that K's TV, which is a massive, incredibly popular YouTube broadcasting channel in Brazil, started a live social media campaign mid-match.
Oh, wow. What were they doing?
Their goal wasn't just to talk about the game. They actively mobilized their millions of viewers to go boost Vozinha's personal Instagram followers.
That's amazing.
And then television networks in Portugal saw the traction and started doing the exact same thing. Suddenly, the digital campfires were lit. All Portuguese speakers globally, regardless of their own national loyalties, were uniting behind this tiny nation and this veteran second division goalkeeper.
That is the raw power of new media entry points. You do not need to be a die-hard football tactician who understands the nuances of a 4-1-4-1 deep block to appreciate the story of a 40-year-old journeyman defying a billionaire team.
It's just a great human story.
Exactly. That is a fundamental human interest story that transcends the sport itself. Social media communities and podcast ecosystems grab that narrative thread, pull it across different platforms, and humanize the statistics.
According to the insights from Buzzsprout and OBSBR on how digital creators build content, there is a very specific, almost scientific template they use to amplify these moments.
The hook, the segments, the call to action.
Yep. They take the hook, which is the impossible 0-0 draw, and the mind-blowing one-foul statistic. They break it into digestible segments. Bozini's flow state saves, Rogers' bitter complaints, Boobies' to shepherd tactics, and they use a call to action, like going to follow the goalkeeper's Instagram to drive cross-platform growth.
They take a 90-minute match and stretch it into literally weeks of digital storytelling.
Exactly. In the modern era, the referee's final whistle of a 0-0 draw isn't the conclusion of the event. It is the starting gun of the media life cycle. A 40-year-old goalkeeper becomes a global meme, a symbol of resistance, and a hero overnight, because podcasters, YouTubers, and TikTok creators rapidly process that narrative, package it emotionally, and distribute it to millions of people who didn't even watch a single second of the live game.
Which makes me want to ask you a slightly provocative question to wrap up this thought.
Okay, let's hear it.
What does this all mean for the future of sports consumption? Are the fans and the modern media machine actually more interested in the story of Cape Verde's underdog survival than they are in the objective 734-pass tactical perfection of Spain?
Oh, undeniably, yes. I mean, human beings are fundamentally wired for narrative, not for spreadsheets. Spain's possession statistics appeal to the intellect and the tacticians, sure, but Cape Verde's survival against all mathematical odds appeals to the heart.
And in the digital media landscape, raw emotion drives engagement.
Every single time. The story of the underdog, fighting with honor and discipline, will always generate a wider, more passionate, and longer-lasting ripple effect than the story of expected dominance playing out exactly as the algorithms predicted.
We are wired for narrative. That is perfectly stated.
And what an unbelievable narrative this has been. As we wrap up this deep dive, let's distill what we've actually uncovered today. We started with an impossible result, a 0-0 draw that broke the physics of the sport, and we found the fascinating mechanics behind it.
We unpacked Cape Verde's absolute tactical mastery, how they defended the geography instead of the ball.
And their unheard of discipline, committing just one single foul in 94 agonizing minutes against the European champions.
We explored the physiological and psychological mechanisms behind that defense, highlighting the monumental heroics of a 40-year-old goalkeeper entering a flow state and a defensive line that shifted with spatial perfection to refuse the Giants' entry.
We looked at the profound clash of mindsets, right?
Yeah.
The frustrated corporate-like entitlement of the Spanish heavyweights expecting a mathematically guaranteed win, contrasted against the joyful, Morabito acceptance and shepherd-like patience of the underdogs.
And finally, we saw how the modern digital campfire takes a single, localized miracle and spins it into a global cultural phenomenon that unites diasporas and goes viral across languages.
It really is a testament to why we continue to watch live sports. Despite all the predictive models, it remains the ultimate unscripted human drama.
It absolutely is.
And as we leave you today, I want to leave you with one final, lingering thought to mull over on your own. We live in an era where advanced analytics, billions of dollars, and tactical homogeneity threaten to make modern sports, and honestly modern life, highly predictable.
The big algorithms say the big money should always win.
But think about this. Will the miracle in Atlanta inspire a new blueprint for underdogs everywhere, not just in sports, but in business, in art, in life? A blueprint where you don't fight the giant by breaking the rules, or by matching their aggression, or by fighting dirty. But instead you fight them by executing the rules with such agonizing, patient, ethical perfection that the giant simply defeats itself in frustration.
It is a powerful question to consider. Sometimes perfect discipline is the ultimate form of rebellion.
Perfect discipline as the ultimate rebellion. I love that. Think about our martial artists from the beginning of the show, dodging all those heavyweight punches. They didn't win by hitting back harder. They survived by never being exactly where the giant expected them to be. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the numbers, keep looking for the human element behind the statistics, and keep exploring the fascinating stories hidden just behind the headlines. We will see you next time.